Welcome to the deep dive. So today we're tackling something really important. It's something that causes a huge amount of stress for families. We're talking about medication management errors.
Yeah.
You know, that feeling, that awful moment of fog where you just think, wait, did I take my pill this morning?
Yeah, that horrible uncertainty. It's such a common cognitive trap, isn't it? And our source material really drives home that this complexity, this anxiety, it doesn't just land on the patient. It creates this really taxing, kind of unsustainable burden on the whole household.
Exactly. We saw this really clearly with the case study of Mr. P.
Mm-hmm.
He was caught in this, well, frankly, dangerous loop. He was accidentally taking his blood pressure medication twice some mornings.
Right. Double dosing.
Yeah, and at the same time, sometimes skipping his evening anti-inflammatory completely, just
Right.
chaos. And his wife,
Totally.
totally exhausted, basically policing his every move, hiding bottles, just constantly on high alert.
And that's the real tragedy, isn't it? The sort of default reaction is usually, oh, it's memory, or trying to enforce this really strict kind of exhausting monitoring. But the idea we're exploring today, coming from applied behavior analysis, or ABA, is pretty revolutionary. It says, look, these errors, they're rarely just memory failures. Almost always they are system design failures. The environment itself is setting people up to fail.
Right, so our mission in this deep dive is to unpack those ABA principles. We want to give you, the listener, a kind of shortcut, a blueprint maybe for redesigning these medication systems so they become fundamentally mistake-proof. We're aiming to trade that constant stress for certainty.
And that certainty, it really comes from understanding the medication process itself as what ABA calls a behavior chain. Think of it like a sequence of steps, right? Each one depends on the last. If just one link in that chain breaks or gets skipped or repeated,
The whole thing falls apart.
exactly, the whole process fails. So we're talking about building systems where doing the wrong thing is actually difficult and doing the right thing, while success is visually undeniable.
Okay, let's start there. Let's diagnose how fragile that chain actually is. Because when someone just says, oh, I took my pill, it sounds like one simple action. But if you break it down, like how complicated is that sequence really?
It's surprisingly complex. When we look closely, there are at least 7 distinct steps involved in just taking medication, and you have to nail every single one every single time. It goes something like, locate the right bottle,
Right.
read the label to confirm it's the right one, right time, open the cap, which isn't always easy,
Right.
count out the correct dose,
Okay.
actually swallow the pill or pills,
Good correction.
then, crucially, record that you took it somehow, even if it's just mentally. And finally, put the bottle away. 7 steps.
Wow. 7 steps. Every morning, maybe every evening too. That's a huge reliance on perfect cognitive function, perfect recall, which, let's be honest, is just not how brains work all the time.
And that's exactly the flaw. You know, when stress kicks in, or you're tired, or the phone rings, or you're just experiencing that normal cognitive fog that happens,
Yeah.
any one of those 7 steps can easily get skipped, or worse, repeated. You might find the bottle, but then you forget to log it. Or you count the dose, but then you get distracted and can't quite remember if you actually swallowed it. Our job, using ABA principles, is to radically shorten that chain, make success almost automatic.
Okay, let's dive into that. Starting at the very beginning of the chain, the trigger, the cue. ABA calls this the antecedent, right?
That's right.
So if the errors can start even before the pill is touched, how do we fix that initial cue? Where do people usually go wrong with just the basic setup?
Well, often they fall into what you might call the tidiness trap, which leads directly to the out of sight, out of mind failure mode. So the wrong antecedent is hiding all the medication bottles away neatly in a drawer or a bathroom cabinet.
Because it looks better.
Exactly. But functionally, it forces you to rely entirely on active memory just to start the process. It creates all these little decision points. Do I need my meds now? Where did I put them? Which bottle is for the morning?
Okay, so hiding them away, even though it seems organized, is actually the wrong antecedent. How do we design a better one? One that makes the behavior more automatic?
We need to shift to centralized, visible cues. We want the antecedent, the trigger, to be really obvious and functional, not hidden away just because it looks nicer. The key design principle here is using something like a large, clearly labeled AM/PM weekly pill dispenser. And this is crucial. That dispenser needs to live in a highly visible spot that's part of your daily routine.
Like where?
Right next to the breakfast plate, maybe, or beside the coffee maker, or even next to your toothbrush in the bathroom. Somewhere you interact with every single day without fail.
Ah, I see. So the dispenser itself stops being just storage. It becomes the primary nonverbal cue. Like its presence is the reminder.
Precisely. It's a constant visual signal that the task is either pending or done. And this is where we start applying that ABA principle. Reduce choice to reduce error. You pre-sort all the doses into that weekly dispenser.
Once a week.
Yeah, ideally once a week. And doing that, it immediately eliminates like 4 of those 7 fragile steps we talked about. You no longer have to locate individual bottles or read tiny labels every single time or struggle with multiple caps or count out the dose when you might be rushed or tired.
Okay, but hang on. Isn't filling that dispenser once a week still a complex task? Doesn't that just shift the stress?
It is a complex task, you're right. But the key is you're containing that cognitive load. You're doing it just once in a single weekly ritual. Hopefully when you're feeling rested and focused. You're not spreading that complex, error-prone activity across, say, 14 different moments throughout the week when you might be tired, distracted, or foggy.
Right, right. You front load the hard part, the planning, so the daily execution can be almost on autopilot.
Exactly. Autopilot is the goal for the daily action.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now let's get into the really critical part. The cues are set, the dispenser's visible. How do we simplify the actual behavior taking the pill and, crucially, confirm accuracy instantly? This is where you mentioned the visual consequence comes in.
Yes, this is absolutely core to the ABA solution. We take that messy 7-step cognitive nightmare and we condense it way down to a short, really reliable 3-step chain. This is what we call the chaining in ABA terms. And this is really what you, the listener, need to focus on implementing.
Okay, 3 steps. What are they?
Okay, step 1. Locate the visible daily slot in the dispenser. It's right there. You see the day, the time.
Simple enough.
Step 2, open that specific slot and take the pills.
Right.
Step 3, and this is the game changer. Physically manipulate the system immediately to show the task is complete.
Physically manipulated. What does that look like?
This creates the visual consequence, that instant confirmation that just kills the second guessing. The system has to be designed so that taking the pill changes something visually. So the pill slot might now be visibly empty. Or, even better, you use a system where you flip over a little lever or a tab changes color. Something undeniable happens.
Okay, so back to Mr. P. The example was, when he took his morning pills, he flipped the little tab for the AM slot.
And it went from green to red.
Now,
Exactly.
the red meant done.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Flipping that tab created this stark, unambiguous visual fact. He didn't need to rummage through his memory asking, did I take it? I think I took it. He just looked at the dispenser. If that AM tab was red, task complete. End of story. That's what we mean by designing for certainty. It actively replaces that churning anxiety with quiet visual confirmation.
That's really powerful. Okay, now we absolutely have to talk about step 3 from the caregiver's perspective. The social side, the reinforcement. If someone is helping a loved one with this, how do they reinforce the success without adding more pressure or making it feel like nagging?
Yeah, this is so important. We need to really contrast the wrong way of reinforcing with the right way because this is often where even good systems can fall down due to the interaction. The wrong way, unfortunately, is often fear-based and focused on the future. It sounds like, oh, good, you remembered your pills today. Maybe that means you won't end up back in the hospital this week.
Oof.
Yeah, which just ramps up the anxiety, doesn't it? It makes the person feel like they're constantly on the verge of disaster, probably making them more likely to be foggy tomorrow.
Exactly. It increases the pressure. The goal of reinforcement here isn't about preventing future negatives. It's about linking the correct behavior right now to an immediate, positive, routine-based feeling, success and relaxation. So the right way is immediate, it's visual, and it's specific to the system, it sounds like. Hey, I see the red tab is showing for this morning. Perfect. That task is complete. Now that's sorted, let's relax and enjoy your coffee. Or, great, pills are done, let's read the newspaper. You link it to the next pleasant part of the routine.
So the reinforcement isn't really praise like, good job. It's more like acknowledging the system worked and removing the tension. Yes, exactly that. It's confirming the system provided the answer. And that certainty itself is the emotional reward. It says, we don't need to worry about this anymore today. And over time, this visible success builds genuine self-efficacy. It tells the person, look, I managed this important task correctly, calmly. It shifts the whole emotional tone of the medication routine from high anxiety vigilance to ideally quiet, confident, autonomous action.
That distinction feels incredibly important, especially for listeners who are caregivers. That emotional labor is just
Hmm.
It's immense. So let's shift fully into that caregiver's corner perspective. You mentioned the sources talk about this really critical shift from policing to auditing.
Hmm.
Can you unpack that?
Yeah, this is maybe the hardest emotional and practical shift for a caregiver to make. Because the stakes feel so high, right? It's incredibly difficult to step back. Policing means you're watching every swallow. You're asking, did you remember? You're getting into debates about whether the pill was taken. It's constant monitoring of the person. Auditing means you shift your focus. You trust the system you've designed. You don't have to hover or monitor the person's every action. You just monitor the system itself.
Okay, but how does the system actually allow the caregiver to step back safely? How do they know it's okay?
Because the system provides that undeniable visual proof. You, as the caregiver, simply audit the state of the pill dispenser. Is today's AM slot empty? Is the little tab flipped to red? If the system is working as designed, you only need to check that visual fact. You don't need to interrogate the person's memory. The goal here is to create an environment where the correct action is basically the only easy action available. This maintains the person's dignity, their independence, but without adding unacceptable risk.
That framework, auditing the system, not policing the person, that's huge.
Yeah.
Let's run through some quick, practical audit checks, things our listeners could maybe look at with their own systems or a loved one's system, like right now.
Okay, good idea. First, do the instant system test. Imagine a visitor, someone who knows nothing about the routine, walks up to the pill station. Can they tell instantly just by looking and without asking anyone if the morning dose was definitely taken? If the answer is, I'm not sure, or, well, you'd have to ask Dad, then the system isn't clear enough. It needs simplification immediately.
Okay. What about visual noise? You mentioned hiding things, but what about just clutter?
Yes, second point. Avoid competition. Absolutely do not store the essential prescription medications right next to vitamins or herbal supplements or anything else that looks kind of similar in a bottle or blister pack. You need to distinguish the critical medications visually and spatially. Every extra bottle or box in that immediate area creates another decision point, another chance for confusion. Keep the essential behavior chain isolated and distinct.
Makes sense. And you mentioned making the antecedent the trigger stronger. What else can help there?
A simple trick is to introduce color cues. Get a bright, high-contrast placemat, or even just a piece of colored card, and put it underneath the pill station, the dispenser. That block of color acts as a strong, nonverbal anchor for the location. It consistently signals, this space is for pill time. It helps anchor the routine physically, making it less dependent on just remembering the time of day.
Yeah, our sources were pretty clear about why just setting phone alarms or relying on verbal reminders often isn't enough, right? It's tempting to think tech is the whole answer.
It is tempting, but they often fail because, again, they target memory, and memory is the fragile link we're trying to bypass. If your phone alarm goes off while you're, I don't know, on the phone or dealing with something urgent, what do?
Swipe it off. Silence it.
Exactly. You silence the cue, but the critical behavior taking the pill easily gets disconnected or forgotten. ABA focuses on these persistent, physical, visible cues. If the slot is full, the action is still pending. If the slot is empty or the tab is flipped, the action is done. You don't need perfect recall because the environment itself confirms the reality.
Okay, and one final really crucial point for caregivers. Avoiding conflict. What if your loved one insists, yes, I definitely took my pills, but maybe you, the caregiver, still feel unsure? What's the auditor's response then?
This is where the system design really pays off. You rely on design, not debate. You don't have to get into an argument. You don't have to express doubt, which feels accusatory and just creates tension and resistance. Instead, you can both just look at the system together. If the system provides that clear visual consequence, the empty slot, the flipped red tab, then it answers the question impartially. The system itself becomes the objective source of truth. It trades all that stressful emotional labor and potential conflict for simple, objective certainty.
That's just a brilliant practical framework.
Yeah.
And it really brings us back to the core idea, doesn't it? We're talking about designing our environments, our homes, our routines to fit how human cognition actually works. Acknowledging the reality of forgetting, the reality of stress, instead of just hoping for ideal, perfect memory all the time. It's such a powerful application of system design to solve a really high-stakes, everyday problem.
Absolutely. It creates safety, yes, but it also aims to restore independence and dramatically reduce that daily background stress for everyone involved.
So as you go about your week, maybe take a moment, look around your life. Where else are you, maybe unconsciously, relying on perfect memory when a little bit of smart system design could help? Audit some other routine where confusion or errors sometimes creep in. Maybe it's remembering if you locked the back door or turned off the stove or fed the cat. Ask yourself this: what simple high-contrast visual cue could I introduce, maybe even today, to make success undeniable?
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. Hopefully, it helps make life a little simpler, one well designed behavior chain at a time.